Just days after being cut, Shedeur Sanders didn't wait for a camera crew or a second chance. He turned the lens around. A multi-episode documentary series dropped first, not as damage control, but as infrastructure. This wasn't a vanity project. It was narrative reclamation. Full editorial control, IP ownership, and strategic release. An athlete seizing authorship in real time. For the Browns, it was an aftershock. For the NFL, it was a warning.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Sanders' rejection became his distribution. The league's media machine, built to confer visibility, had been rendered unnecessary. This wasn't a pivot. It was a controlled demolition of the belief that value must be assigned from above. Sanders dismantled the league's monopoly on platform, legitimacy, and narrative, then rebuilt the entire concept of athlete influence on his own terms. What looks like independence is actually sovereignty. From a Hall of Fame validated quarterback tech to the grant-matching pipeline for underfunded schools, every arm of his operation proves that relevance is now a matter of execution, not endorsement. This wasn't the Browns losing a player. This was the league losing its script. The Browns thought they were managing a roster. What they really triggered was a movement. In the space of 48 hours, Shedeur Sanders transformed from an unsigned quarterback into a fully autonomous brand operator who launched a $14 million infrastructure built entirely outside the league's jurisdiction. No front office calls. No players' union coordination. No ESPN special. Just an independent execution so fast and complete that it left the league flat-footed. This wasn't a bounce back. This was a bypass. And while most front offices would be analyzing a player's tape, Shedeur flipped the script entirely. He didn't ask for the league's validation. He showed how little it mattered. His launch included a multi-episode documentary series with zero league oversight, giving him absolute control over how his story would be told. It's not just about image, it's intellectual property. Storytelling as leverage. And by doing it on his own terms, he cut the NFL out of a narrative they thought they owned. This wasn't content. It was accountability. No spin. No edits. No filtered press releases. Just a direct channel between athlete and audience, owned, distributed, and monetized by Shedeur himself. And that was just the opening move. The Youth Football Initiative is what really turned heads. This wasn't a photo op in a gym or a once-a-year appearance at a camp. It's an independent, scalable training infrastructure for underserved communities, completely self-funded and completely free from NFL branding. It's not outreach for PR, it's development with intent. A direct challenge to the NFL's historically surface-level engagement with grassroots talent. He didn't replicate their system. He built a better one. One that trains, uplifts, and sustains, without requiring a player to ever touch an NFL pipeline. And he didn't stop there. He launched a grant-matching foundation that redirects funding to high school and college athletic departments that have been overlooked, underfunded, and left to fend for themselves. The money isn't filtered through sponsors or public relations departments. It's direct liquidity, private capital, without corporate strings. The kind of capital that keeps programs alive, levels the playing field, and disrupts the traditional sponsorship hierarchies the NFL has comfortably relied on for decades. This wasn't a donation. It was redistribution, and it landed like a warning shot. Then came the wearable quarterback analytics platform. And no, this isn't one of those influencer gadgets built for hype. This tech was co-signed by NFL legends, Hall of Fame-level names. That validation gave it immediate credibility and positioned it as a serious investment in performance science, not a gimmick. It bridges generations, proves athlete-led innovation can match or beat corporate tech labs, and gives players access to their own data without league mediation. That's not just progress. That's autonomy. And the most jaw-dropping part? None of this required NFL permission. No league checkmarks. No institutional cosigns. He built the ecosystem, plugged in the pieces, and hit launch, without ever suiting up for another team. While most players wait months for another opportunity, Shedeur proved he didn't need one. He created his own relevance, and it traveled faster, farther, and louder than most active starters. So now the NFL's left confronting a problem they didn't anticipate. What happens when a player doesn't need the league to matter? Because this wasn't just about Shedeur reclaiming his value. It was about showing that value can be constructed, not conferred. That if you're fluent in attention economies, digital infrastructure, and strategic vision, you don't need a franchise to define you. You can build your own institution and make the league look outdated in the process. It hit the Browns the hardest. They didn't just lose a player. They got caught looking in the wrong direction. Their evaluation process wasn't flawed because of a missed scouting detail. It was flawed because it used a framework that no longer applies. They saw Shedeur as a backup QB with raw mechanics. They didn't see him as a 21st century architect of value. They measured tape. He moved culture. That's the real gap. NFL teams are still stuck in an era of linear development, where measurables, draft position, and institutional visibility determine worth. But that world doesn't exist anymore, not for athletes like Shedeur. He didn't just outperform their expectations. He made their entire system look like it couldn't keep up. And it's not just one team. It's the entire model. Shedeur exposed how deeply the league depends on athletes staying inside the lines. Follow the process. Sign the contract. Play your part. Let the system shape your story. But he showed that the moment you break away and do it with execution, the league doesn't have much left to hold over you. Visibility is no longer something franchises can grant. It's something athletes can claim. And Shedeur didn't just claim it. He scaled it. He amplified it. He weaponized it into a complete ecosystem. From the documentaries to the youth program to the funding pipeline and the tech platform. He built what most franchises couldn't build in a year, in 48 hours. And he did it solo. This wasn't rebellion. This was responsibility. A values-first, impact-driven model that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. And when something is built that solid, that fast, and that purposefully, the league has two choices: evolve or get outpaced. Because athletes are watching. College prospects are seeing what agency actually looks like. Not brand deals. Not merch drops. Full-scale autonomy. They're entering the game not just with agents and trainers, but with media strategies, equity asks, and IP negotiations already in motion. And they're not asking for permission anymore. Brands are shifting too. Shedeur's authenticity outperformed polished campaigns and celebrity endorsements because it was real. It wasn't optics. It was structure. That's what sponsors want now. Not access to a league, but access to meaning. And Shedeur delivered that, without ever needing a locker room. The Browns' move, intended as business as usual, became a referendum on whether NFL franchises understand the moment they're living in. They looked at Shedeur and saw a roster cut. What they missed was a cultural inflection point. A reminder that the next generation of athletes isn't just talented. They're strategic. They come with infrastructure, leverage, and a plan. And that plan no longer includes waiting for a jersey. The reason this hit the league so hard, it wasn't that Shedeur Sanders made noise. It's that he made impact without their platform. For a system built entirely on gatekeeping, visibility, and the illusion of scarcity. That's not just disruptive, it's dangerous. Because now every draft hopeful, every wave player, every young athlete watching from the sidelines knows the truth. You don't have to be chosen to matter. You don't need to be on a roster to be in control. You can build your own ecosystem, speak your own story, and become a force of relevance without ever touching the field. And the NFL knows it. The Browns, specifically, were the first ones to get hit with the realization. They thought they were making a strategic decision. Roster management, depth chart chess. But what they really did was ignite one of the biggest paradigm shifts in modern sports. By underestimating Shedeur, by looking at him through an outdated lens, they exposed the structural weakness of their own thinking. Their mistake wasn't just misreading his talent. It was misreading the era they're in. This is no longer a world where talent evaluation begins and ends with stats and scouting reports. That version of the NFL, where players stay in their lane and play the game, is over. What matters now is how an athlete moves through culture, how they build across verticals, how they own their name, image, and legacy in real time. And that's what Shedeur brought to the table. Not just performance, but infrastructure. That's the difference between a prospect and a prototype. The Browns let go of someone who wasn't just trying to play the game. He was designing a new one. And in that new game, the power doesn't live with the team. It lives with the player. That's why this moment isn't about a roster move. It's about a reality shift. Because Shedeur didn't launch a brand. He launched a sovereign, vertically integrated system. Media, tech, philanthropy, development, all aligned, all owned, all operational. Nothing borrowed, nothing dependent on traditional institutions. That's the blueprint now. And it doesn't require draft status, Pro Bowl appearances, or MVP votes to execute. It just requires vision and execution. And Shedeur delivered both, fast. His documentary series? That alone was a threat. Not because of what it says about the Browns, but because of what it represents. Full narrative control. No network gatekeepers. No team filtering. No NFL Films editing room. It's Shedeur's voice, his framing, his ownership. And in a league that's used to managing every storyline, that's a direct challenge to the hierarchy. Now the content that shapes a player's image isn't league-owned. It's self-produced. That's not branding. That's asset class transformation. Shedeur isn't just telling his story. He's turning it into cultural equity. And once that IP lives in the world, it's beyond the league's reach. Same goes for his youth football initiative. The NFL has long operated as the top of a rigid, centralized pipeline. College ball, combines, draft days. It's all part of a system that claims to discover talent. But Shedeur's initiative flips that. He's not working within the pipeline. He's building a new one. From the ground up. Independent. Scalable. Community-rooted. And that's a threat to the whole structure. Because when athletes start building development systems outside the NFL, the league loses its grip. And when those systems are values-driven and purpose-built, they gain legitimacy fast, especially in the communities the league has historically underserved. That's not outreach. That's succession planning. That's what the league should be doing. But Shedeur's already doing it, and he's doing it better. No red tape. No performative campaigns. Just results. Then there's the foundation, the grant-matching mechanism that funnels capital straight into underfunded programs. No middlemen. No waiting for someone at corporate HQ to approve a donation. Just money where it's needed, now. This doesn't just bypass the league's charity model. It exposes it. Because while the NFL holds ribbon cuttings and issues glossy press releases, Shedeur is reallocating resources directly and efficiently. And it's working. Quietly, quickly, and in a way that makes institutional philanthropy look like theater. It's not symbolic. It's structural. And that's where things get uncomfortable for the powers that be. Because when you pull back and look at all of it, the documentaries, the tech platform, the youth development program, the financial redistribution, it's clear. This isn't a comeback arc. This is a replacement strategy. Shedeur didn't just walk away from the NFL. He built an alternative to it. And the league didn't see it coming. They were too busy measuring him by tape. Too focused on old metrics, throwing mechanics, playbook mastery, sideline poise. They didn't measure cultural fluency. They didn't scout for leadership off the field. They ignored things like audience velocity, ecosystem, design, and digital-first narrative architecture. So while they were busy plugging him into outdated models, he was out here building his own. No waiting, no approvals, no gatekeepers. And now the league's left asking, what happens when more players follow that path? Because the truth is, Shedeur's model is repeatable. It's not dependent on superstardom. It's built on access, execution, and mindset. And the moment other athletes realize that they too can bypass the system, own their platform, and monetize their actual value, the floodgates open. The NFL, for all its size and tradition, can't stop that. Not anymore. This moment exposed that athlete compliance isn't the norm. It's a legacy of habit. And habit is a weak foundation for power. Especially when athletes are coming into the game already media-savvy, equity-literate, and mission-driven. It's not that the league is collapsing. It's that its monopoly is eroding. The new power is sovereign, decentralized, athlete-owned. And Shedeur just proved it. So where do things go from here? More players will start negotiating not just contracts, but documentary rights. More prospects will enter the draft not just with agents, but with production teams, foundation blueprints, and tech portfolios. The NFL will be forced to adapt, not out of innovation, but out of necessity. Because if they don't, they'll lose cultural control to the very people they once believed were interchangeable. And that's what makes Shedeur Sanders the flashpoint. Not because of what he lost, but because of what he built. A fully functional, values-aligned infrastructure that operates without institutional permission. He didn't reject the system. He outgrew it. And now, everyone else has a new lens to look through. Coaches, GMs, players, fans. They all saw what's possible when an athlete takes full agency, when they stop asking and start architecting. The ripple effects of what Shedeur Sanders just pulled off are not hypothetical. They're already visible, already reshaping how everyone, from players to executives to the media, talks about value, control, and legacy in sports. Because let's be honest, the Browns didn't just cut a quarterback. They cut loose the first clear, undeniable example that the system isn't required anymore. Not for visibility, not for economic success, not even for cultural relevance. And if you're in the NFL right now, that realization hits hard. It's one thing to fear free agency. It's another to fear irrelevance. But when a single-wave player becomes more culturally dominant, more commercially effective, and more strategically savvy than entire organizations, that's not just a wake-up call. That's a fire alarm. What Shedeur did was pull the future into the present. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a stunt. And most importantly, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. That's the old narrative. The tired redemption arc. The he'll show them trope. Shedeur skipped all that. This wasn't about proving himself to the NFL. It was about proving the NFL isn't the center anymore. And that's the part that scares them the most. Because Shedeur didn't operate from rejection. He operated from readiness. The fact that his enterprise launched immediately after the waiver hit means one thing. He was prepared. Strategically, logistically, psychologically. He didn't just have a backup plan. He had a better one. One that didn't rely on the league, the media machine, or any legacy infrastructure to function. That's a level of foresight the NFL's traditionalists still don't know how to process. And while the league is built around metrics and compliance, Shedeur is operating on a completely different axis: autonomy, execution, velocity. He's not reacting to events. He's initiating change. That's the difference between being in the system and being outside it, looking at it for what it really is: limited, dated, and slow. And here's where things really start to shift. Because the next generation of athletes isn't just watching, they're learning. Every recruit, every college star, every late-round pick, they're seeing in real time that it's not about waiting your turn anymore. It's about building your turn, owning your story, investing in your own platform before anyone else tries to profit off of it. Shedeur's model is a signal. It says, you don't need the league to be seen. You don't need the draft to be valued. You don't need the team to be relevant. And it works. That's what makes this moment so irreversible. The playbook has changed. And not gradually, not quietly. This was a full-blown detonation of the old order. A complete recalibration of where value comes from. And who gets to define it. Because here's the real story. Shedeur built an enterprise that doesn't need the NFL. But now the NFL might need him. Think about that reversal. That shift in leverage. Shedeur now has a documented, successful blueprint for athlete sovereignty. And that model is not theoretical. It's fully functioning, cash-generating, socially impactful, and media-dominant. The league, on the other hand, is still scrambling to understand what just happened. They've never had to negotiate with players like this. Players who come with a built-in audience, an active mission, a functional business ecosystem, and the proof that they don't need to be on the field to matter. That puts pressure on every GM, every coach, every brand sponsor, every league partner. Because now, signing a player isn't just about evaluating performance. It's about aligning with a vision. about respecting ownership, about proving you're worthy of being part of their platform, not the other way around. And that turns the whole hierarchy on its head. The NFL used to be the peak, the goal, the only game that mattered. But Shedeur just showed that the game is portable, that the influence, the economics, the cultural impact, they can all be engineered outside the machine. And once that idea becomes widespread, you can't contain it. That's why this moment matters. It's not about one guy doing something impressive. It's about an entire model becoming visible. And once it's visible, it's viable. And once it's viable, it becomes standard. Shedeur didn't just break through. He built the door. And now that door is wide open. So what happens next? Colleges will have to start offering more than playing time. They'll have to offer ownership structures, IP freedom, brand alignment. Agents will need to become business architects, not just negotiators. Scouts will need to expand their definition of value to include digital engagement, infrastructure maturity, and mission clarity. And teams? They'll need to evolve or become irrelevant. Because the players are no longer asking for a seat at the table. They're building their own. Bigger, better, faster. And it's not just the NFL. This is a signal to all professional sports. Adapt or get out of the way. Because the athletes are done waiting for systems to change. They're becoming the system. They're designing the frameworks, launching the platforms, and controlling the conversations. And Shedeur? He's not an outlier. He's the first wave. That's what makes this so powerful. He didn't just exit gracefully. He exited strategically. And in doing so, he reframed the entire concept of what it means to be dropped. Because let's be real, Shedeur wasn't dropped. He was released, in the truest sense of the word, freed from the limitations of a league that couldn't see past its own playbook, unshackled from a structure that mistook compliance for potential. And now, he's proving that ownership is the career, not touchdowns, not contracts, not press conferences. Ownership over your story, your platform, your impact, your future. And once that's the standard, the league has to play by new rules. The old gatekeeping methods? They don't hold. The exclusivity complex? Dead. Because when visibility, capital, and audience loyalty can be built independently, institutions lose their power to dictate the terms. That's the shift. And it's permanent. So if you're watching this unfold and thinking, this isn't just a player's response, it's a movement, you're right. This is the turning point, the before and after line, the moment where player power stopped being aspirational and started being operational. Like if you're ready for this new chapter. Comment if you think other players are about to make their move. And subscribe, because the system isn't just changing, it's being rewritten. Right now, in real time. And you're going to want a front row seat.